Hi there. Good evening. Welcome to Litquake, San Francisco's literary festival. I'm Jack Bulworthy, co-founder of Litquake. We are in our 22nd year as San Francisco's literary festival, and our programs run through this weekend, October 23rd. If you are in the Bay Area on October 23rd, that is our infamous Lit Crawl, featuring 4 hours of events at multiple venues throughout the Mission District. For all the details, you can go to litquake.org. We also have a running archive of all of our events, most of our events so far, on our YouTube channel, so go check that out. Today, we are honored to be able to present a virtual live event showcase for Tomás Morín and his new poetry collection, Machete, published by Knopf. Tomás will be in conversation with Texas Poet Laureate Lupe Mendez. Many thanks to everyone for watching today. This event is co-presented by our good friends at the Texas Book Festival. So let's meet our authors. Tomás Morín is author of the upcoming memoir, Let Me Count the Ways, as well as the poetry collections Patient Zero and A Larger Country. He is co-editor of the anthology Coming Close, 40 Essays on Philip Levine. His newest poetry collection, which we are talking about tonight, is Machete. He teaches at Rice University and Vermont College of Fine Arts, and he lives with his family in Texas. He is speaking to us live from the city of Houston. He will be in conversation with Lupe Mendez, who is the founder of Tintero Projects and works with emerging Latinx writers and other writers of color within the Texas Gulf Coast region. He is a Canto Mundo Fellow, a Macondo Fellow, and an Emerging Poet Incubator Fellow, and he has shared his poetry across the country. His latest book, Why I Am Like Tequila, won the 2019 John A. Robertson Award for Best First Book of Poetry from the Texas Institute of Letters. He is the 2022 Texas Poet Laureate, and he's speaking live to us also from Houston. Both authors are, we just learned, within 10 minutes driving distance from each other, but through the magic of Zoom, we don't have to leave our homes. A few quick orders of business before we begin. Don't forget to follow Litquake on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for our latest updates. You can also support the participants today by buying their books. There will be a link to Book People where you can click and buy direct from the largest independent bookseller in Texas. We also ask for your support of the Litquake organization to allow us to bring you these events largely for free. We are a nonprofit based in one of the world's most expensive cities. And if you believe in keeping literature a key component of San Francisco's cultural landscape, please consider dropping us a few bucks. Every bit helps. You can go to litquake.org and donate, or you can also find us on Venmo at Litquake or through PayPal at info@litquake.org. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Please welcome Tomás and Lupe.
So buenas tardes, good evening. I think for us here, it is 8 o'clock, and for everybody in San Pancho, it's about 6 o'clock for you guys. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It gives me great pleasure and an honor to have this great conversation with Tomás. Followed your work for quite a while. I think we've met like once or twice in passing, but it's good that we got to finally do this. We joked earlier that we were thinking of maybe not doing this and then just doing this as Instagram in a car and driving around to a bar or something. But so it's an honor and a pleasure to get to talk to you about Machete. I read through the whole thing. Brilliant work. I think it would give us a really great opportunity to set up the stage for a conversation if we could possibly maybe hear a few of the pieces, and then we can get into all the nuts and bolts of all this amazing work, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks to Litquake for Texas Book Festival, also, for having us. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this event with the once and future Texas Poet Laureate. I saw on the attendees list like a couple names that were familiar. So Karen, if Karen and Reyes, if you're the Karen and Reyes that I know, thanks for coming through. I appreciate it. I think I'd like to start with, so I'll start with the first the first poem of the book. It's called I Sing the Body Aquatic. When I offer my sweaty hand in greeting, I can see the future. No matter how gently you squeeze, I know when our hands meet, you will crowd my crooked index and pinky fingers against their straight as an arrow brothers, so that my hand looks more like a fin than an appendage perfectly evolved for tying shoelaces or wiping a tear from the red face of the missionary who rode his bicycle under the sun all day to reach my porch. When he takes my hand, he won't find hope or brotherhood or whatever he's looking for. Because I can see the future at times like this, and because I have an unshakable faith in the law of averages, I know when our hands embrace, he'll find proof of natural selection in the shape of my fingers, evolutionary holdovers from an era of gills when the earth was all aquarium, and some distant relative with sleepy eyes and splayed fins who, tired of being mocked by handsome carp, said, to hell with it, and climbed out of the sea and across moonlit dunes toward a sandy life. In that moment, he couldn't have predicted 300 million years later, one of his descendants, having long since grown legs, would be belly down on a beach before an ocean that would carry him and his own to the land of Montezuma, to roast in the sun for 4 centuries, where their conversion into dry Catholics would be so perfect, you would never guess, I can't swim to save my life, or anyone else's, or that the sound of a wave pounding a rock makes me nostalgic. You would never know any of this until we met on the street, where you knocked on my door and embraced my hand and felt Galilee on my palm, which you might mistake for nervousness, unless you were familiar with the embarrassment of having the only wet fins at a party, because somewhere in your family there was a pike or two hailing from one of the lost schools that under pain of death swam far from the Atlantic or Mediterranean, around both of which I hear shame and fear are still the coins of the realm. This next poem had it start with, I don't know if any of y'all remember this, quite a few years back. It was, I can't remember which summer. There was a summer when there seemed to be, every week there was popped up on the news a story about someone dressed up as a clown who was menacing like playgrounds and like apartment complexes. Someone just dressed up as a clown off to the side, you know, off to the, in the distance somewhere. I remember I told a friend of mine, I said, I bet you money not a single one of these clown people will, not only will they not be arrested, but none of them will get shot. Whereas people who look like us,
Correct.
you know, you go to the grocery store and you might not make it back.
Correct.
Dang,
and yo, when you said that, and I think of all these videos that have popped up about different people doing stuff, and
yeah.
Stop. Okay, got it. Makes total sense.
So this poem is called Whiteface. We drove 5 miles under the speed limit. We kept the nose of our cars out of crosswalks. We signaled early. In the trunk, the spare was full of air. We made sure we had gas. Running out of gas left a lot to chance. Don't get stranded, our mothers had always said. In the wrong neighborhood, or on the highway, or alone, or with our friends. Keep both hands on the wheel. Is your registration up to date? Did you replace the bald tire? It wobbles. You know who wobbles? Drunks. We nod and nod. Nodding doesn't comfort our mothers, not like in the 70s and 80s. We were still children then. We hadn't learned to lie yet, at least not well. Breaking curfew was still in the future. Our mothers wanted us safe. They still believed this was possible back then. They nod and we nod. Our two heads swing back and forth like a Newton's cradle. You know the toy, if not the name. It often sits on the desk of people who give orders. 5 suspended spheres are lined up. They are made of steel. Lift one and they will click and clack forever. You can see it now, can't you? This toy that proves momentum and energy are not lost. Sometimes only 2 spheres are used, but our heads are not made of steel. They are made of stardust. Stardust is surprisingly delicate. It is delicate like a trapeze. Our heads swing high in the dark. Our country is a circus tent. The trapeze has always been the last act of the night. This is why we nod and nod, because we are at the end of something. From down below, when the light catches our heads, they shine. They shine like disco balls. They shine like something sharp, like a thing that could light your way, that could make your heart race, that could free you. We saw a trapeze act on TV once. 2 people passed a ball to each other. It was shaped like the earth, if the earth were made of glitter. We wanted a ball like that, so we collected pounds and pounds of empty cans to sell all summer. Coke, Mountain Dew, Pepsi, Big Red, Crush, Miller Lite, and Coors too. Not unlike the ones on the shoulder now, where we have been pulled over because of a phone call, because a dog crossed the road, because a diaper needed to be changed, because the route to the dentist was under construction. We are big, we are small, our clothes are plain, we are wearing pants, we are wearing a dress, a shirt with sleeves, a shirt with no sleeves. The bullet leaves its jacket on the road. The speedometer squats at 0. Red and blue lights dance in the mirror. What if next time we wore a doctor's coat, hung a stethoscope around our necks? What if next time we wore our mother's camouflage? We could be the color of sand and rocks. What if next time we wore a black suit and shiny black shoes, a white priest collar around our throats? When you say, "Show me your hands, get on the ground," we could say, "Hail Mary, full of grace." What if next time we paint our faces white, like a happy clown? Say we were on our way to wave at kids with our machetes from the edge of the woods, near a playground, near a house, near a school. This person has the right to remain breathing. Anything they say can and will be used against them in a court of law. They have the right to an attorney. If they cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for them. Do you understand the rights I have just read to you? With these rights in mind, do you wish to speak to us? Just checking my time. Let's see. Two dolphins. Because the instructions had only pictures, I put the crib together in half the time. Have I told you how lost I feel, how words confuse me when they sit limp like a water hose with no water on a sheet of directions next to words? I'm so disoriented right now by the imaginary sheet of words I just invented that 6 lines ago I wrote next to words when what I meant to write was next to pictures. And even the whole business of that water hose simile is odd, but not in the good way. And now I'm noticing that it's also phallic and thinking, Jesus H, can a man for once not include a penis, real or figurative, in a poem with breasts? Let me try again. I put together the crib, changing table, rocking chair. I hung the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou print perfectly level. I keep the twin bed neatly made with its melon and mint blanket and its rows of marching elephants. I know how to do these things. I can even change diapers, dress my son, bathe, feed, and burp him. Not in that order necessarily, but I'm open to things changing weekly because they do and have and will. Tonight, when I said to his mama that she should sleep all the way through if she wanted to, because I would wake when he did, I thought, I got this. I said it deadpan, as is my way when I want to get a laugh, when I pretend to be the tough hero who sacrifices something, only I never am. I'm the character who clowns, the one who loves etymology so much that after he learned the pan and deadpan is slang for the face, Googled words for a man's chest, only to lose hours in the list of questions under. People also ask, what is a man boob? Is a tank top tan line called a double dolphin? How big should male nipples be? What's another word for treasure chest? What is a synonym of honest? Do men's nipples leak? If a man is a rooster, does he have breasts? Thoughts like these keep me up watching the monitor. When it wails, I hurry down the hall. Clean diaper, check. Food, burp, check and check. So we bounce on the exercise ball that is blue like the ocean in some Japanese paintings. I used to spend so many hours on this ball, trying to tighten my abs in obliques, riblets, I called them. He fusses and wiggles while the glowworm curls in a corner with Brahms and other classics deep in its body waiting to be released. I stop bouncing and tilt the ball forward and back to rock us. From the changing table, the velvet blue face of his twilight turtle watches me. The smile it wears says it could live forever in this room, forever throwing a field of orange stars and crescent moons from its back onto the ceiling and walls. Our rocking syncs with the sound machine. I picked ocean because to my ear, it was the least threatening of the 6 choices. Thunder means lightning has already struck somewhere or someone. Waterfall is Annie Taylor in 1901, tumbling in a barrel down Niagara Falls. Rain is a leaky roof. Summer night is crickets and no wind or electricity to run the box fan. And rainforest is the chip chip tweet of birds near and far, a pleasant chorus that'll put me to sleep, which is a clear and present danger to us both. So ocean it is, surf, gulls, a sandpiper. This was my lullaby when my parents brought me home from the hospital to their tiny apartment on North Beach. Across the street, the piers and the Gulf where my father caught lunch and dinner for them. What do sand and infinite water look like in the dream of a child who's never seen either? I drop my shoulder, and now the baby is at a 45-degree angle. He's the hypotenuse that closes my triangle. His open mouth brushes my nipple and pinches it for only a second. But it's long enough to startle me from my nocturnal daydream of dunes and the damp sunlight of the beach. He misses his mama's body that is resting all night for the first time in weeks. I press the soft back of the pacifier against my nipple, and he gets to work, his little fingers kneading my chest like dough. My son, the poet, already mixing metaphors out of my body. Who could blame him? During the day, my skin is a desert. My chest is 2 palm trees and the distance between them a mirage. But tonight, my body is a boat named the Belafonte. My breasts are 2 dolphins with electronic gear strapped to their heads, who stare with goofy grins when they're asked to do something simple, like swim under a hull and send back footage. My heart wears a pale blue uniform and a red knit hat because my heart is Bill Murray, playing a famous oceanographer. Using a cross-section model to give a tour of the boat, his voiceover is clear and dry when he says, "This is the observation bubble," which I thought up in a dream, actually. 2 albino scouts swim with the ship. They're supposedly very intelligent. although I've never seen any evidence of it.
Man, so
Yeah,
those
yeah.
beautiful, 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 beautiful pieces. So unless you had another one, I was gonna get into
No, I'm good.
some of the questions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I had arranged for everybody watching this, full transparency. I'd already hit up Tomas and was like, I got some questions and I was sending them to you. Although when I do have good conversations, I'm redonkulous about like asking several questions at once. So I wanted to make sure we could get through those pieces and see what's what. First of all, beautiful work. The book is like, in sitting with the book, all the imaginings that I had as I was reading this, it hit every like nuance and cultural thing, and then like current ideas and art and everything else in there. And so it was a real treat to read all of it. Because there were so many threads within the book itself, I'm always curious to know like what are writers like reading and watching or listening to or engaging with while they're creating the work they're creating.
Yeah.
And then how different is that than your normal everyday things that you choose to watch? Like,
Right.
does your brain switch on to, I'm writing this stuff and let me see these things so that I'm in that mind frame, or is it the everyday processes that come through? What fits for that? Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's like there's nothing that I'm toggling between. You know, it's really I feel like, I mean, I started my MFA in 2000, and it's taking me like 20 years to finally get to a place where I could make enough room on the page and in my work for this much of my life. Like, I feel like this book comes the closest out of all the ones that I've written, comes the closest to recreating on the page the way my mind works, the way I think through something, the way I sound, my humor. I mean, it was like in my, I remember reading like some poems that were in my first book when I was first getting started. You know, and I had this realization where I thought, like, these aren't funny. I'm a funny guy. Like,
Right.
I like making my friends laugh. I love laughing. Why is that not in my work? You
Yeah.
know, so then I thought, well, you know, I'm going to try to make room for that, right? So the whole, like, these last 20 years have been like this really slow, just trying to arrive on the page as with as much of myself as I
That's
can.
awesome.
And so with this book, like, one of the things that's really come through is like all the pop culture stuff. You know, like, I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan, like a lot of people are. But I also love stuff like Talladega Nights, like
Yeah.
Wolf Girl, like all that stuff. And you
What-
know, Talladega Nights is in one of the poems,
yeah.
um, and yeah, like, just making room for that. I remember it was an early interview that Phil Levine did. I was reading that University of Michigan Press, the Poets on Poetry series, and
Yeah.
that first volume he had called "Don't Ask," and there was an interview in there where he talked about how he used to be really superstitious when he was composing a poem. He wouldn't get up from his desk and leave for anything, like, until, like, he'd gotten that first draft down.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah,
Yes, I've read
and
that.
then he eventually he thought, like, well, this is stupid, right? Like, and he had the confidence to, like, just get up, go answer the door, take a walk or whatever, and then whatever he encountered while he was away from the desk, when he came back, like, he brought it back with him and put it in the poem.
Correct.
You know, and this idea of, you know, letting the world in, you know, and for me, it's also been a process of letting like letting people in, like letting characters in, letting other voices in. I had the really good fortune of having Levine read my master's thesis, and he made this comment. He was 3/4 of the way through, and I was reading the notes, and he had made this. He had written this comment about like, he's like, imagine my surprise when I got to this poem and there was an actual other person. He was like, I hadn't realized. He's like, I went back and I read the other poems, and I hadn't realized that there was no one else in these poems. And in that poem, a neighbor shows up, you know, and he was like his thing was like, young male poets have this thing when they're starting out of writing young man alone poems. And
wow,
you know,
yeah.
and it's like at some point, like, okay, yeah, you write those to get yourself started, but at some point, you got to make room for the world.
The world, correct.
You know,
that's smart. That's smart.
Yeah, and you know, if you think of his poems, like they're just full of characters, chock full of so many characters and so many voices. So it's been a process of just trying to make room for those.
That's good stuff. So that this response actually leads into that. The next question I had was, so this collection feels, having read some of your other work, this collection feels much more like it's weird to say this, but as a dad, it also feels very like this is the way your brain works. Like stream of consciousness. I've got to get all these thoughts down because there's all the other things happening in the world, right? So it feels very much whirlwind, very much like half stream of consciousness, half tongue-in-cheek engagement with the joke, right? How, and you kind of already alluded to it, but how much of this was another speaker versus like more you? Like if you had to give it a percentage or something, like how much of this is entirely you arriving versus there's still an element of, say, that man alone work in there? Like how, does this feel more like you're transitioning into like this coming forward with all of this and there's still more to go? How does it feel for you as you put this book out there?
Oh man, if I had to guess at a percentage, I'd say maybe like 85% is me. And the times when it's when the voice isn't me, which isn't many poems, it's very obvious that it's not me. So like there's a poem in the voice of a roll of duct tape, duct tape, and then there's the Sartana and Machete in Outer Space poem,
correct,
which is in the voice of Jessica Alba's character,
right?
I mean, there's always and you know this, like there's always even if you're writing persona poems, like there's always a little bit of you that filters into it. Like in the Jessica Alba poem, the Machete poem, like the whole thing about that, there's this passage about how it's the weekend, she's sleeping in and he snuck out to go get some barbacoa for breakfast, and the whole he's looking, she likes it not too oily, not too dry, and he's gonna go get some pan dulce, like that's me, I don't know what she likes, I don't know what Jessica Alba's
alluding to that. I circled it and I was like, I actually haven't thought of that in a while, but that is correct.
Yeah. Because it has to hit that right spot, right? But anywho, so stuff like that, like it still gets in. But the other poems, like it's me, which is a huge departure. Like, I mean, most of the poems in my first book were persona poems. I was writing through masks, and I think because I didn't have the confidence to write as myself, because I thought, who the hell wants to hear a poem in my voice? Like, I have nothing interesting to say, So I was creating these characters, and I would. I know one of your questions you asked about research. Like I do a lot of research. I kind of tried to approach it like a method actor, And that's like I went to school on that approach. One of my other teachers, the poet she was my teacher in my MFA program my last year. And anyone who knows her work, they know all about those dramatic monologues. And I remember her telling me that, like, she told me, like, if she was going to write a poem in the voice of James Dean, like, she would read a James Dean biography first.
Yeah.
And
then get into it that way.
Right. And they get into it that way and try to find that, she'd say, like, try to find that those like handful of like personal details that she could sneak in that would make you forget that it was her who was writing it.
The nuance of it to get into
right. Yeah. The nuance.
Yeah.
So like, I went to school on that approach. I had, great models and teachers, and it's funny, I sort of, I had to back my way into this confidence to write as myself, to feel like, well, maybe someone might want to know what I think in my voice. I won't have to sneak it through a mask,
Yes, I think you hit it on the head. So how does it feel now that the book's out in the world? Is a part of you like having this disconcerted, like, oh snap, this is all of me, how do I, like, is a part of you at all hesitant in terms of like questions you might get about the work itself, or has that sunk in yet that that those things are there? Or are you more like, you know what, to hell with it, it's going to be what it's going to be, and here we are?
I think if they mentioned in the intro, I have a memoir coming out next year. And I think if I didn't, I think there are two things going on. If I didn't have that memoir coming out, where I won't say that I'm more vulnerable than I am in these poems, because I think it's pretty equal. But, there's something about writing in lines and stanzas that, because I've been doing it for so long, and I have a track record in it, that it feels safe. It feels like I can be myself, and and I'm okay. I can take whatever people have to say. But that prose thing, it's like Kiese Lehman has talked about how, like he mentioned somewhere once that if he was able to rewrite heavy, like do it all over again, there's some things he would have left out, and how no one had, I think he said something like, no one had talked to him beforehand about the importance of, the way he said it was, I thought was great, of protecting our insides, protecting our guts.
Correct. Yeah.
And there's this, I'm on a panel at AWP about this, about like how to be vulnerable like in nonfiction and still protect yourself. Because I think readers of nonfiction are who like exclusively read nonfiction are a whole different beast than readers of poetry.
Correct.
We have this whole speaker versus, the confessional school, blah, blah, blah. We have this whole, it could be the speaker thing, but like when you crack open a memoir and you see that
it's there.
It's the guy whose picture is on, or the woman whose picture is on the back,
right?
And it gives people, I think people feel like they have permission then to speak into your life. They feel like they know you. Oh, they read this book.
They get to opine on these things without, consideration. It was like, well, you put the book out there. What do you? Yeah.
Right. So that I'm worried about. That I'm a little stressed about, and just worried about like what kind of questions. Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe this book kind of gives you like a soft launch into prepping for what the memoir might bring? Like, does this give you a little bit of like, okay, I'm putting my foot in the water, here we go?
I mean, sort of, but also like not really. I mean, so the memoir is about growing up in South Texas, and my father was he had a drug addiction. He struggled with drugs for a long time, and my surrogate father, lo mismo. And just growing up in that culture, as a child in that, and also my struggles with mental health. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and like I've written about fathers, right, in my poetry. I've like my obsessive compulsive disorder, like it shows up in subtle ways in my work, like that Whiteface poem that I read, like it's all numbered sections, and it's satisfying to me in it, and it pleases my obsessive compulsive disorder in a way that is private, that only I know of, that isn't obvious. But like in that memoir, just coming straight out and talking about my OCD and its ties to my family and all of that, and coping mechanism, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's
survival
like there's
skill.
no hiding, right? There's no
Right.
hiding behind metaphors or imagery
It's there.
or lines or whatever. It's just it's
Out in
just
the open. No,
yeah, it's out in the open. It's like
It's like be
right,
careful. Right.
right.
No, yeah. Well, congrats on even the memoir and all
Thank
these massive steps. Like that's good stuff. And thank you for sharing all the personal space and context behind all of it. So I guess this leads into, I guess that not the hardest question, but the one that I'm always like, how do you do it? Which so yeah, okay. So in writing Machete,
Yeah.
the versions of this, like how many versions of the manuscript existed before you sent it in and it was, changed into what it is now? How many did you sit with?
That's a great question. I want to say that there were over a number of years, probably at least four. At least four. And when my editor picked it up and said she wanted it, it was also like with the agreement that there would be some changes, that she had in mind that she thought would make the book stronger. And I trusted her, because it meant like cutting out this like massive 10-page prose translation that I had right in the middle, that I translated from the French by Henri Michaud. And man, like I really love that piece. I haven't published it yet. But I was like, I was like, yeah, okay. I trust you. But the great thing about it was that pulling that piece out meant I needed to write. The book was too short and I needed to write more.
Yeah.
And the poems that came out of that were Two Dolphins, Machetes. Like that was like 20 pages, just those two poems.
Yeah.
I wrote the Machete in Outer Space poem also. If she hadn't, suggested taking that out, the book wouldn't have, it would look so different
Than what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were the ones that were the hardest to, well, you kind of already alluded to that. Were there any other ones that were like hardest to like put out? And then at the same time, which were like the easiest ones to be like, oh, we're dropping that one. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Like, were there any that kind of, set it up that way?
No, like the ones, like a couple of the others that I pulled out were poems that had been in my first book that I pulled out. They were in the second book and I pulled out.
Oh, no.
And I kept trying to find a home for them, because I believed in them.
Yeah.
But at the very end, I was like, yeah, like I'm just going to retire these because I mean, they have a soft spot in my heart, but they're just not at the level. They're not operating at the level of these other poems. And it's not just because they were older. I mean, there's a poem in here. So like the Duct Tape poem, I drafted that one in, my first draft was in 2010. And then I finished it in 2017. Like I worked on that one for a long time. So it's not because they were older poems. It's just the vision was too small in them, and these other poems, they were just it was just a bigger, it's almost like I wrote those on a postcard, like those that I pulled out, and these other ones are written like on a huge poster board, and they just didn't fit, and I thought, well, I don't want to go back to a smaller vision. I don't think I'm going to be doing that, anytime soon. So, yeah, so I just pulled them out. Yeah.
So we're at like 8:43, close to 8:45. So for anybody that's in the audience, thanks for joining us. Great conversation that's occurring now. And thank you, Tomás, for all your vision and this book and your thoughtfulness with responses. But so anybody that's in the audience, there's a Q&A here in the Zoom chat. So you can click on it and you can put a question and we will get to your questions if we can. There is one that already popped up that says, did you have an intended audience in mind for these poems?
Not really, it's just, whenever I write, and I'm sure it's this for a lot of writers, the first draft is always for me. I'm always the audience that I have in mind with that first draft. Obviously that expands with the others because I don't want to write private poems. But yeah, and no real specific audience. I feel like one of the messages of the book is that, we can make it. We can make it through this. And if you're someone who's, whatever community you're from, whatever walk of life you're from, if you're going through something, one of these poems might speak to you. And, one of the things I was, trying to do in these poems is just really get at that, how do we survive? How do we make it when it feels like what we're experiencing is endless? The epigraph to the book was my attempt to set that up. It's that old Spanish proverb, Dios, aprieta, pero no ahorca, right? Which the English version is, is God never gives you more than you can bear, right? Than you can handle. But when you translate it literally, God squeezes, but he doesn't strangle. We're in a whole other place. We're in a whole other place.
There's a different sensibility. For some reason, it feels like there's a different sensibility in Spanish. I guess because that's where the dicho comes from. And so it's like, oh, we get the context, but the translation takes it so far out of context. You're like, God did what? Yeah.
Right. And the book of Job has been is my favorite book of the Bible, and that book's always been a sort of presiding spirit over all my work. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question.
I think that does. Thank you for that. And then I think the Dolphins poem, which is pretty much a poem about fatherhood. Yeah. Did you consider, or have you thought of the fact that your kids, offspring, reading these poems that you wrote? And does any of that aspect affect the writing? What is it that we leave behind? What is this legacy piece, and how does that function, right? Yeah. So
I think that's important. Absolutely when a family member makes it into a poem, I absolutely think will they be okay with this? Will they be okay with this in the future reading it? I don't I don't want anyone I love to be embarrassed, or regret, my having put them in my work. I talk to my students all the time that, when we have to take care when we do this, because if the other person that we put in our work doesn't like it, they don't have the same resources to respond that we do. They can't say, well, you know what, I'm going to put you in a poem and publish it in Poetry Magazine. Let's see what you think of that. Right. So there's this power imbalance. We have these resources with language that they don't have access to, and because of that, we have to take great care, great care with them. In that Two Dolphins poem, the sound machine, the turtle, the glowworm that plays the music, the bouncing ball, all of that was in my son's room. So for me, that was a way to try to preserve those things that I know, in another year or so won't be in his room anymore. A couple of years, they'll end up in a garage, in the garage, and then eventually, they'll be given away to, some other kids, and, they won't be there anymore. So in that poem, I was really trying to preserve for him this room that we made for him, that he's spent so much time and that's been so special to us, for him, while also including for him what my childhood, my infant room was like, growing up in that, that first year in Corpus Christi, and all those sounds and stuff.
It just, not that it just dawned on me, but I think it's sat with me for a little while. I think having seen your readings before, and now I remember it even more, the concept of Latinx, Gulf Coast, Texas raised writers.
Yeah.
It's not a niche, but it's such a small number.
Yeah.
How I found it as I was reading Machete, some of the images and the mentions of, especially even in the dolphin poem, I have almost the same concept. We set our my daughter Luz Maria, we set her background, her white noise background noise, as either ocean or a rainstorm, and for the very same reasons that you noted. And I giggled as I read it, 'cause I was like, is that just because we're coastal folks, because it's there? And so I wonder, as you've been writing, how much of that background, how much of the Texas Gulf Coast, how much of that seeps into your work, or does that sit? Is it a small obsession, a large obsession? Are there any of the images that keep echoing as you've created more and more work?
Yeah, I think it's, that unfolding that I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, but just making room, more and more room for myself. I think that's one of the things that's, been also creeping in. I think people don't often think of the Texas coast as being a border also.
Yeah.
If you grow up in that, along there in that community, it there's all that, what at times feels like emptiness on the other side, on the other side of the beach.
Right.
And but at the same time, it's home.
Yes.
And yeah, it's that, and no one ever talks about that border writing.
Right.
Like you're saying, we're such a small, small number.
It's the imaginings too, is your connection to land and water is also that traversing of una via. You've got the bridge, in some places it's a causeway,
right.
Some places it's a flat spot,
and
it translates and transforms, what you understand as a peninsula or an island or this bay versus the mainland. and
Right.
like there's always the constant that is the mainland. You are not centered, you
Yeah.
are othered just in the geography of it. And so that I feel like sometimes that broaches some of my work, and I'm always kind of thinking through it. And I'm like, is anybody else doing any of this, or am I?
Yeah.
But yeah. I as I was reading the book, I was drawn to that. I was like, I think that in a sort of kindred way, like that speaks. So it was
Yeah.
good to see all that.
You know, I didn't realize until the cover was coming together for this book that my first two books, like it's total like coastal. Like the first book has an albatross on top of a ship on it. The second book has a deep sea diver, you know, on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, like that's like the
Fair,
designers
right?
were pulling that. The designer was pulling that out of the work, you know. And I wasn't even picking up on it. But it's like there was this weird thing, like growing up in Mathis. Like I spent so much of my childhood in Corpus, but growing up in Mathis, it was this other like it was weird. It was almost like being on this island, like this in between place. You know, there's Corpus and the Gulf, but then there's the lake.
Yeah,
you know, that's right next door, a lake that we have access to as a park, right, where we would go. And the thing that always struck me about that lake, you know, lakes come up in my work all the time, is all the houses like on the top of the cliff. I always wondered, like, who lives up there?
Right.
You know, like, who are these people? I don't think I'd go to school with these people.
None of those people.
Right. And when so I thought that as a kid, and then when I went to school, I did my undergrad at Texas State. Whenever I would introduce myself, I would say where I was from. They'd be like, "Oh," every now and then there'd be a kid who'd be like, "Oh, yeah. I know Mathis. My family has a house over there on the lake."
Like, oh,
right. And now I was like, so like y'all live there, like year round? They're like, no. We just like pop out down for like a couple weeks in the summer.
And like, also you're one of those guys.
Right. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'm the townie.
Right.
Right. You know, y'all are the ones who, you know, who swoop in, you know, go stay at your fancy house. And yeah, so there was this, you know, it's like the lake was, you know, and it was weird too, because I mean, technically it's Lake Corpus Christi, but like we call it Lake Mathis, you know.
Right.
You know, so this whole like in between it, like it's ours, but it's not. And
it's funny too, you say that too, and I think of, because all of it is, I grew up in Galveston, so it's all of it's Galveston Bay.
Yeah.
But Townies, one side of it is off its bayou, but it's because that's what the train let people off. So the train will let you off at the bay. So everybody just started calling it off its bayou. It's not an official name, but it's not on any maps, but you be a townie and you know what the, you know, and it's the phrasings of space that you just inhabit and are accustomed to. So
it's like with a Whataburger. You know, someone is not from Texas when they call it what a burger.
Correct. Well, they're like, it's not, that's not how you say it.
Like, yeah, you're not from here.
You're not from here. Sit down. Go sit down. It's those things. Yeah. So man, this is a great conversation, man. This is awesome. Que rico. So we are at 8:56. And I think either Graham or Jack, if you guys want to come in and do some great announcements for everybody that's doing Litquake. Did y'all have a good time?
Thank you guys so much. We thank you so much for joining us at our festival here in San Francisco from Texas. It was so great to hear your perspectives, to hear you know, more about the culture of poetry where you guys live. Congratulations to Tomás on the publication of Machete. It's now available from Knopf. Please go and buy it. The link is in the chat area. For book people, support local indie booksellers, especially in Texas. And we hope to have both of you back at Litquake someday. It was just a real pleasure. And I appreciate you guys making the time. And this program will be archived on YouTube very soon. And if you want to watch it again and share it, and we'll make sure that that both of you get the links when it goes live. And the Litquake Festival continues through October 23rd at litquake.org. And our co-presenters at the Texas Book Festival, I believe it begins this weekend. And if you're in Texas, go see it, because you can go see Tomás in person instead of a little tiny screen.
And Tomás, at some point, we'll just have to go get beers or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, you guys, you have all night, really.
Yeah, we can go do whatever. So
thank you so much, Lupe, Jack, Litquake.
no, this is awesome.
It was so good. It was just so good. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Have a good evening, y'all.
Bye.